Hi everybody, Creative Katie Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today, a mini make art journal. I'm going to be working in my mini disc bound journal. Here is just a little quick flip through of the pages that I've done. There are videos showing this as well as preparing the pages in this Dollar Tree disc bound journal. So here are the pages. I've jelly printed on some of them. I have some that are just coated with gesso, and these are the blank pages. They were black like that before I did anything. And today I'm making the mini makes using this Tim Holtz Botanical Ephemera pack. This is the first time I'm using his pack, and I just thought, I'm sure people are curious about what's in them. So you have these die cuts, and in the botanical one, you've got butterflies and blooms, and you can see the color scheme. They're all kind of vintage. So I'm going to be matching these to a background, so I want to really see what I have. So I'm going to spread this out on my table. Now in the kit, you get 2 of every die cut, and they are opposite, and which is great when you're setting up orientation because you could put it on either side. And I'm getting a feel for the colors that are in here, the patterns, the flowers. In this video, I'm going to be making not 1, but 4 mini art journal pages. And each one has slightly different techniques, although there is some repetition to that. Now, when you're doing a mini make, the purpose of it is that it minimizes your time. You've kind of done things ahead of time. So most of the backgrounds are done, although I will be tweaking them. I'm using some ready to go focal images. And that means you can get in there, have the fun of doing a art journal page without a huge amount of time, which for most of us, that is a problem. So I'm setting these to the side. Now I'm getting the backgrounds. I've got a good idea about the colors. And what I'm going to do is just addition the ephemera, the focal images on top. And I just throw them on and see what I like. And when I get one that I go, oh, yeah, that works, I will leave it and just over time, just kind of finalize my decision making. I just want to put, again, I want to see what I have here. Now, all these backgrounds, I will put a video to where you will see me creating this background. I do use the gel plate to do it. And I've used a variety of colors to keep my options open for when I do the mini makes. So there I have a variety of these. I also have the ones that are gessoed. If I wanted to start from scratch, I could. And I'm just throwing them on and then discarding if I find one I don't like. Now here I'm using a complementary color scheme where the coral is opposite the blue and green, and that's why it works. Here, this is an analogous color scheme where the colors are all in the same family. And those are 2 good ways of picking your focal image. I also am looking to add contrast. Now, as I'm setting this up, I'm aware that I am going to be adding a sentiment to this. So I'm going to need some space with that. Now, some of the designs here, we have teal and it matches. Don't worry if they're too pale. I'm going to show you a way to adjust the colors. As I was saying, some of the ephemera, they're bigger, but you can also cut them and alter them. And I'm going to show you that as well. What Tim Holtz gives us is just the starting point. The backgrounds, again, are a starting point. You can tweak each one to make it perfect. So as I'm going here, I'm turning the composition, I'm the orientation of the page, and I'm eliminating what doesn't work and just making those final decisions. Now here I have the same ephemera, 2 different backgrounds. So sometimes when I have a choice, I will get up my camera, take a picture, and then look at it on the picture and then make my final decision. So now we have 4 mini makes. Now I'm doing 4 for the purpose of the video because 1 is just simply not enough. But you can do this in one session, decide, match the focal image to the background, set them aside, and then do one at a time to fit the time that you have. Now I am using my sentiment pack. This is the Through the Garden Gate, and of course it goes with the blossoms. But what I've done here is I've resized it. I've printed 4 pages on one, and I've printed this onto adhesive paper. So this is just going to be peel and stick. So again, that just saves you time. And I will put a link to the ephemera pack in the description box below, as well as the adhesive paper and my sentiment pack. I will also put in the iCards the video where I show you how to either make the sentiments bigger, if you were doing a bigger page, or how to shrink them down. And shrinking them down to this size, whether you put them on adhesive paper or not, it's a perfect size for iCads, for ATCs, and other mini makes. And the peel and stick just makes it great. So I'm cutting these down, playing with the orientation. And I want to kind of get that set up before I start altering the background. Now we have this ephemera and it has a white edge. I don't like the white edge. So you can cut it off like you saw me doing, or you can edge it with either distress ink or archival ink. Here I'm using black acrylic ink on a Tim Holtz blending tool. Do what works for you. If that really bothers you, cut it all off. If you hate fussy cutting, use the blending tool. Now, some of this has white areas in between. I'm just using an X-Acto knife here and I'm cutting that out. But you can leave it. If it doesn't bother you, leave it. You can also paint it out later. So you have options in how to make this work for you. And I do that pretty much for all of them, but I don't show you all of that. So you can use scissors and cut off the white, use an X-Acto knife to cut out some of the bigger gaps that are inside, and you can edge it to get rid of the white. This is on thicker paper. But you get a lot. As you saw me when I had it spread out on the top of my desk, you get a lot in the package. These would also work really well if you were making greeting cards, mixed media greeting cards, and maybe that's what I'll do the next project using these. So let's get started on the first one. I love this background. It is brayered on paint that you can see the texture, and then there's some stenciling on there and some jelly print. And I'm using a focal image that matches the colors perfectly. Now, because the die cuts are thicker, I'm using TCW's gel medium. It's a matte finish. Now, the die cuts they're not glossy, but they do have a bit of a sheen. And I'm going to put a coat of gel medium on top, and that's going to dull it down. It is also preparing it for enabling me to tweak it afterwards. I'm going to come in and I'm going to adjust colors. And putting the coat of gel medium seals it, makes it a non-porous surface. You could also use clear gesso on top, and that would prepare it to take any paint that you might be adding later. putting it over off the edge. And now I'm just going to get this to the right size and peel and stick. You could also, if you're doing it in batches, sit in front of the TV and cut these into their rectangular shapes and have them one step closer to being done, which is going to minimize your actual creating time. Now I'm edging this with black acrylic paint. I'm just going around the edge. That black really goes well with the sentiments. I thought I needed a little bit more details, but since there were circles, I'm adding this stenciling, these mini dots, and it's just adding that black, that contrast. Now I grabbed my black Posca pen and I'm just going to outline the sentiment. The black Posca pen, when it's completely dry, it is permanent. And you get a nice bold line. I'm rediscovering my Posca pen, so you're going to see me using the black and the white. Now I'm just adding a little bit of shading using my floating acrylic technique and black acrylic paint. And I can shade on top of the ephemera as well if I wanted to, but the coloring is there. Now I want to add a little bit more color to this, make the sentiment or the focal image stand out. So I'm using my Inktense pencils. You could use your blocks, and I'm matching the color. I just wrote right on it and I'm activating it and I'm just bumping up that color of the ephemera. Some of them were very pastel. And based on, depending on the background you want them, you might want that color to be a little bit more vibrant. And you can use things like your Inktense pencils. You could use acrylic paint thinned down. You can use um, the big brush markers. I'm taking the Posca pen and I'm just putting a line around the edge, and that just finishes it off. And there we have our first mini make. So the second one, we are going to be adding a little bit of detailing to the background, right? Remember that background and the focal image, that's just the starting point. I'm using the Tim Holtz Reflections. This is type, and I'm stamping with white. I wanted to lighten the background a bit and just give it a little bit more interest. So this is a great place. These mini makes are a great place to use your small scale stamps. So you're going to see me using a lot of different stamps. Whenever you use acrylic paint with your stamps, make sure you clean it. I did some stamping with the Sacred Geometry stamp there with black archival ink. And I picked a motif that matched the gel print that was on there. Now here we're using yellow on a mostly blue background. Those are complementary colors, and that's why I chose it. Peel and stick. And I do put a coat of gel medium on top just to seal it in and to make it matte. Now I'm adding the color. I'm just going in, I'm adding a little bit of that burnt sienna orangey color. The Inktense blocks, if you don't know them, and the pencils, there are ink. So once they are activated, they are permanent. I wanted to add a little bit of that color to the background to make everything work, so I'm just adding little bits of it. How easy is that? I do have a video series where I use the blocks and the pencils in mixed media. They are a great tool. and definitely an investment. I'm outlining it with them and activating just to add more of that color. Now you can make a puddle. This would be better with the blocks actually. And if you were buying and you're not a colorer, I recommend the blocks over the pencils. Here I'm making a puddle and then I'm splattering with them. Making sure I dry in between sessions, in between steps. And then I'm edging, doing the typical usual finishing stuff. You edge, you shade, you highlight. In another mini make video, I showed using the leftover bits of napkin that you always have after you do something, if you're interested in that. Now I'm using white here, my white Posca pen, because I wanted to lighten and brighten this page. And there we have number 2 done. Number 3, I love the background here, and it just goes so well. It even has a little bit of that red in the background. It goes so well with those roses, the colors. It was like I would have designed this background for it. So here I'm taking that sentiment and I'm actually getting rid of a lot of the white. Now this is going to make it a little tricky to peel off the background or the adhesive part, but I want it more of the background to show and I want it less white. So that's always an option. On these mini makes, you don't have a lot of real estate and there's, not a big space and you don't want it to look too terribly crowded. Now I'm looking at the focal image and while the colors on the background are perfect, and I could just glue that down, I want to add a little bit more. So I'm grabbing, this is Postal stamp and my red paint, and I'm going to add a little bit more detail to the background and introduce that red, more red into the background to match that rose. So I use this, it's a postal stamp, and I'm just adding that to the background. So look at your stamps and see how you can use them to add these things. You can also take all your stamps out of those packs if you're using it as I do for mixed media and have it in a pile or in a package all together. Now I'm going to add a little bit of script in here. And I'm using black. This script is very, very fine. This is also from the Tim Holtz Reflection one. I've used the typing earlier. The mini makes are a great time to test things out and try them. It's a small enough project. If it goes terribly awry, it's not a big deal. And you might discover, oh, I really like that postal mark, and I'm going to use that more in my bigger art journal pages. So I cut off the one stem, it was too high, and I'm going to reposition it. Again, you can tweak it. I could have just cut out the big red rose if I wanted to. I could have cut them apart and put them on two sides. Remember, you don't have to use them exactly as they come. And that's where you get to be, that's you being the creative. People think if you're only an artist if you can draw. You're an artist when you play with colors and textures and patterns and you're pulling things together. Using the gel medium here again, matte finish. You can also combine, now not on a mini make, but you can combine some of the ephemera together. So you might pick 2 or 3 or 4 and do them all on one page. Mix and match. Loving this one. This one was my husband's favorite. And now number 4. So this one, I have a nice stencil on there. And I decided I'm going to put these daisies, but I wanted to introduce that color to the background. So I grabbed this maidenhair fern stencil. And I'm just going to add that color to the background. Make it all work together. I could have, again, those backgrounds were pretty much good to go. I could have just simplified and, just matched. Here we have a complementary color scheme. That coral is opposite the teal. Peel and stick. Now, I printed this out with a laser printer. If you are printing with an inkjet, you may have to do some steps to ensure that it doesn't bleed if you put wet on top. You could also just not put matte medium on top. Make sure that you just stick it down and don't put any wet medium on top. And that way you avoid that whole problem. And really, with the peel and stick, that will work really well. You can also color. I've left all of these white, but you can do a light wash on them. And the adhesive that I've purchased through Amazon works really well. Here I'm adding a little bit of shading in between and shaded around it. Just adding a little brightening up the color with my Inktense pencils. It's a little thing, but they add. I could use the Inktense pencils on top of the white on the sentiment as well. Don't do that if you used an inkjet. You don't want to add that wet medium on top to smear. And I'm edging this one with white, and I'm just adding a little bit of dots, making it my own. And then I decide I've got all 4 of these. So now that I have all 4, I'm going to grab my gold, thin to gold paint, and I'm going to splatter gold on all of them. And again, since I'm doing it with all 4, it's one cleanup. Close-ups follow. Which one is your favorite? Do you like working on a small scale? Leave me a comment. Give me a thumbs up. Follow me on Instagram. Until next time, go get creative.